Welcome back to Lone Star Spirit. I hope everyone is getting back to some sense of normalcy here along the Texas Gulf Coast, especially after Hurricane Beryl made landfall. Unfortunately, we still have quite a few areas in southeast Texas that are without power and have been since early Monday morning. I'm going to speak on that here as we get further into the episode. And this is basically going to be kind of a lessons learned, or I'm going to be throwing out some ideas and things like that. But before we get into that, unfortunately, we had a little bit of unwanted history made yesterday, and there appears to have been, and it's I'm keeping my verbiage as clean as possible, and not accusatory or anything like that. But it appears that there has been an attempt on former President Trump's life yesterday evening at a rally in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of speculation still going on now as to how this could have happened. Just a myriad of questions. And I think the best thing that we can do right now is to offer up prayer to not only former President Trump and his family. He seems to be just fine after that. Uh, I'm not going to speculate too much on uh, the cause or anything like this, but unfortunately, there was a attendee that lost their life, and I also would ask that you send thoughts and prayers um, to the family of that individual. It was a senseless, uh, cowardly thing to do, and this world is unfortunately full of hate, and we unfortunately have to deal with individuals who apparently have no self-control and cannot function without creating some type of chaos in this world. I think I'm just going to leave it there because there's really not much more that I could say that would add anything to it. Just please keep your thoughts and prayers with the individuals that were affected by this, the attendees, the Trump family, and of course the individual who unfortunately lost their life yesterday due to this incident. Moving on. Now, pretty much all week, I have been, for lack of a better term, full of piss and vinegar when it comes to the response of power companies. I have had some not so quite nice things to say about the weather forecasters, the broadcast, whether it be CBS, Fox, NBC, ABC, whoever. I think there's a lot of things that we learned from this hurricane that hit in the early morning hours of Monday, this past Monday, and I hope and sincerely pray that everyone, no matter what walk of life you're in, what your job is, I hope everyone took something from this tragedy, because we've lost so far 11 people from this storm. And of course, thoughts and prayers go to those individuals who lost their life, their family and loved ones that knew these people and helped them in this time of moving on, and hopefully we can get back on track. I had every intention of doing a very angry and very pointed episode with this because believe me, I'm very very concerned and very upset about the fact that we're coming up on a week and there are still people, still towns that do not have power to the residents. The businesses, some of the businesses have power, and that's great, but a lot of residential people do not have power. And of course, I'm trying not to let my emotions get the best of me because my mother, a 70-year-old mother who lives in Wild Peach, Texas, and just outside of Brazoria, has not had power. And power was supposed to have been restored yesterday evening around, or yesterday night around 10 o'clock. And here it is Sunday at, almost 2 o'clock here. And she still does not have power at her residence. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I feel that forecasters, weathermen that you see in your local news, and I can only speak about the Houston area, that I feel that they did not give the gist of what was actually going on. And I have to point out that Mark at Weatherman Plus seemed to be the only one that really took this storm seriously and put out the warnings that this storm could rapidly intensify just hours before it makes landfall. And that appears as to what happened. And all reports said that this was a Category 1 hurricane. I can almost guarantee you that within the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to reevaluate Hurricane Beryl, and it will be upgraded to a minimum Category 2 storm. Now, the day after, or the day of the storm, when the winds finally calmed down, I want to say it was maybe 5 o'clock in the evening when the winds actually died down to somewhere around the 25 mile an hour mark. I actually got in my car and started driving around, and I saw just insane amounts of trees, branches, large branches down, windows blown down, eaves over at gas stations blown down, lines of cars trying to get gasoline wherever they could find it. I probably shouldn't have drove around. I was a little bit low on gas, and that's my fault. I should have gassed up Sunday, made sure I had a full tank of gas, but I actually had to drive to East Bernard to get gasoline, and I don't put premium in my car, and I had to put premium in my car. But at that point, I didn't care. I was in desperate need of gasoline. So, but drove around the town of Rosenberg and really just saw the amount of damage and the insane lines at places like Popeye's Chicken and Whataburger and McDonald's and Jack in the Box and stuff like that. People need to eat. People need to have sustenance, and without power, a lot of people don't have gas stoves or maybe not a barbecue pit. I'm sure barbecue pit sales went through the roof in Fort Bend County, and I saw people lining up at Ace Hardware trying to get propane, and A lot of people were trying to do what they could to ensure that their family stayed safe while the electricity was out. We here, uh, where I'm at, we got power back Wednesday, probably around 2:30. I was already back at work. Uh, it was very hard to sleep. I had my face maybe 3 inches from an open window next to the screen, just praying for a light breeze or anything like that. Woke up several times and just body was covered in sweat and uh, cold showers. Even though I could have taken a hot shower, cold showers were great because it actually felt like it cooled me off a little bit, at least for 5 or 10 minutes. But just the amount of damage, and as I drove through town, I went by the Fort Bend County Fairgrounds, and I saw upwards of probably between 30 and 40 line trucks just sitting there, not doing anything. And again, the winds had died down, and these trucks were just sitting there. You would think that with as large as Center Point is, and that's the basically the company that's in charge of the power line infrastructure in this area. Just to me, it was surprising to see them, and the way I put it was they were sitting on their hands. Now, before I get any further into this, I do want to express my thanks and gratitude to the people in those trucks, the linemen who, every time they get in that bucket and go and work on these high power lines, they put their lives in danger. I'm not blaming the linemen. I'm not throwing any shade their way because they're out there working around a lot of electricity going through these lines, and they're working on it, doing the best that they can. Now, I will be throwing some shade at Centerpoint and maybe even a little bit at the Texas New Mexico power company as well. I did see something that I would like to share with you that it was funny and sad at the same time, and it was a picture of the outages at Whataburger, and the caption above it, and I'll show it to you here on the screen. But the caption was when the Whataburger outage map is better than the Centerpoint outage map. And like I said, it was funny and sad at the same time. Regardless, some of the things that I'm taking away from this, and I'm going to start at the top, and that goes to the weather forecasters, and you could probably throw in the National Weather Service on this, and I am a staunch supporter of the National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. I have a massive respect for what they do. I have a morbid fascination with severe weather. So I have 2 weather radios. After this, I'll probably be buying a 3rd and a 4th. But the way that this storm was tracked, projected, and reported up until it made landfall just left a lot to be desired. And I kind of look at it like this. One of my favorite television shows of all time, or television series of all time, is House. As you can tell, I've got the seasons right here. It's the only thing I really own on DVD. But I would rather have a doctor that's not going to sugarcoat anything, is going to tell me full force, truthfully, bluntly, what the issue is and how it's going to affect my life. If I've got a deadly disease, that require surgery. I want a doctor that comes in and says, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we can do. If you don't do what we think or what we recommend, you're going to die. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Don't sugarcoat it. Just tell me. And I think probably the majority of people would respect that. Even though it may be hard to hear, it's something that when we're dealing with life and death, it's something that I personally would rather be told bluntly than have it sugar-coated and try to break it to me nicely or whatever. I think the same thing needs to be applied to weather forecasting. And as I said earlier, Weatherman Plus seemed to be the only one that was really warning people about the possibility of rapid intensification of Hurricane Beryl as it got closer to the Texas Gulf Coast. How I feel about this is that weather forecasters were relying on models that in the past may have had really good track records, and these models, they're not perfect. A lot of times they miss on in intensity, categorization, things of that nature. And if you've watched any of my past updates on Beryl as it came in, I kept telling you Icon was the one that was the most correct on where this storm would eventually end up. It wasn't until the last video I did before we lost power, which I believe it was the 4 a.m. update, that these three models had it probably within maybe 60 miles of each other at the closest, and they all pointed toward Matagorda Bay or East Matagorda Bay. But the forecasters, I don't think that they really did their utmost, did the best job. Again, it leaves something to be desired, to where they really told people the dangers associated with this. And again, I said this in a couple of videos ago, that a lot of us Texans here on the Gulf Coast hear tropical storm, strong tropical storm, category 1, and even into category 2. They're like, I'm not going to worry about it. I've been through category 4s and category 3s. A category 2 isn't going to be anything. And we were told leading up to landfall of Beryl that it was either going to be a strong tropical storm or a low grade category 1 hurricane. I think they're wrong. I think they're very wrong. And I think that they had a little bit of complacency with this, and it translated to giving even more complacency to the individuals who are getting their information from the various weather sources that they use on television, maybe even radio. This was a very dangerous storm. And as I said earlier, I think this is going to be reevaluated in a few years, and they're going to upgrade this to a Category 2 storm. And not that a Category 2 storm is a major storm, any hurricane. And as we've seen with powerful tropical storms, these put people's lives in danger. And it's better to be over-prepared than it is to be under-prepared. And I think due to partially the reporting and forecasting of this storm, a lot of people were very underprepared for landfall of this storm. Now, there were areas that got copious amounts of rain, but from where I was at, this was more of a major wind event. And I do have some video that I'll show at the very end of this video. I'll attach some of the footage that I got. with the winds and things of that nature. But I think that when we're dealing with hurricanes, especially when we've got a pretty good idea of where they'll go, I mean, we can narrow it down within a week, within it being a week out, that hey, it could come to this area. Me personally, I think it would be better to get gone, go to family or friends or something like that, stay with them. And if they say, well, it's going to go in this direction, you can, and you see it's going in that direction, you can go back home. It's better to be over prepared than under prepared. So I think the forecasters need to do a little bit better job when it comes to forecasting this, and maybe take on that mom, dad kind of vibe and say, hey, look, we're not BSing around here. This thing is serious. Even though it's a category 1, this thing is serious. Take precautions. Get away. If you're going to be in the path of the eye, or you're going to be on that northeast side of this storm, get the hell out. Go. Leave. Go somewhere where this storm is not going to go. With all of the down power lines and a lot of trees falling and taking those power lines down, I think it's far past time for the state of Texas to look at having all electrical transmission lines underground, especially along the Gulf Coast. That should be damn near mandated at this point. I mean, one transmission lines hanging in the air is kind of an ugly sight. It's kind of an eyesore, but eyesores are something that you can look past, something that you can just kind of get used to, and it doesn't become that big of a thing anymore. But when we have power outages that are going to last 4, 5, 6, 7 days in duration and maybe longer, we have people living that require certain electronic devices. We have people that need oxygen machines, people who need CPAP machines, people who need to keep medications refrigerated. And when the power's out and maybe they can't afford a generator, what are they supposed to do? It's a valid question. What are they supposed to do? And I know part of the audience that's going to watch this, they're going to be like, well, the underground lines means that they're going to have to spend all of this money and they're going to destroy people's yards. Guess what? Your yard can be re-manicured. That grass can grow back. Those flowers, those trees can be replaced. But if that means having these these electrical transmission lines underground means that if a category 4 storm or higher hits this area, it helps ensure that power stays on and keeps people safe. We don't have to worry about heat-related deaths. We don't have to worry about people not being able to keep their medications cold or lose power because they're on oxygen and they have sleep apnea and have to use a CPAP machine. That they can, even though doo-doo has just hit the fan, they can at least function. They're not their lives are not put further in danger even after the storm has passed. And I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that underground transmission lines, especially along the Gulf Coast, would be a multi-billion-dollar industry. And that doesn't mean companies like CenterPoint or Texas New Mexico or other electric cooperatives would lose money because the power lines are not in the air. We're messing with people's lives, and that brings me to CenterPoint. I understand that CenterPoint, their website probably experienced maybe a couple of crashes. I know tried to look at the CenterPoint website several times, and it was in a like a protective mode that was the only thing that you could look at, and it really didn't give you an idea of what the power grid outages were in based on the county or much less the city. I got the information that I got from poweroutage.us. And here I'm going to put a picture of the power outages, and you can see where it's dark red. There's a lot of power outages, but it looks like, according to this, Fort Bend was 100% without power, according to this. And I believe, and it amazed me that it took so long, or it has taken so long, for these power outages to get restored. Along with and again, I'm not going after the people who are actually in the trucks, in the buckets, working on the power lines. I'm talking strictly about CenterPoint as a company. If I remember correctly, last year, 2023, CenterPoint as a company, they had a profit of $6.4 billion in profit. That's a lot. That's a number that 99% of us will never see. That just $6.4 billion is just an insane amount of money. Why is it, why are we not moving faster? Why do we not have better response times to these incidents like this? And you could even go so far as to say that the counties and the municipality governments maybe aren't doing their best to ensure that suspended power lines, are free of debris, free of tree limbs that could potentially, on a normal 40-mile-an-hour gust day, not be interfered with by those trees. Especially if it's on county property, along streets and roads. Those need to be taken care of. And a lot of these governments look at not doing this type of maintenance as a money-saving type of deal. They're not going to do it as often as they should. I know for a fact, if you're in Wild Peach, Brazoria County does not do a very good job at all of maintaining the ditches and for drainage when we do have these torrential downpours, whether it be hurricane related or if we just have a really nasty series of thunderstorms that causes some flash flooding. I can say without a doubt that the ditches in front of my mother's home are always full of crap, dead branches that have fallen, trash, all kinds of things, and that goes to the individuals too. The littering's got to stop. The earth is, Texas is not your trash can. The roads are not your trash can. Wait till you get to a gas station, or wait till you get home and throw it in your own trash can. But saying that these are money-saving options or money-saving maneuvers, well, you know what? When the doo-doo hits the fan, you're actually going to spend more money trying to fix what you could have prevented 3, 6, 9 months ago. Common sense tells you that. But again, common sense isn't so common anymore. So what did you learn? What were your experiences with this hurricane? Did you feel that that CenterPoint has failed you? Did you hear that, or did you feel that the weather forecasters didn't really tell you what was going on? the potential dangers of this thing. Whether everybody expects their weatherman to be the friendly guy and always smiling and things of that nature, you know what? Drop the facade. Be truthful. Be honest. Be Dr. House. What were your experiences with Hurricane Beryl? I want to hear them. You can leave them in the comments. And my email is coming up on the screen at the bottom of the screen. TMOLR1973@gmail.com. What were your experiences? And maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll come back and talk about this. I want to give everyone ample opportunity to share their thoughts and experiences with Hurricane Beryl. Are any of you still without power as of Sunday at 2 o'clock? How has it affected you? I know people that, maybe they've got one or two of those small generators, and maybe they're having to spend money on window units and things like that just to keep from being in a uncomfortable and running into the risk of having heat illnesses. Just to be able to sleep. It's hard to sleep when you're sweating. Yeah, and this ain't the old west. We're a little bit we're not accustomed to it, and some people can do it no problem. You're tougher than I am. But what were your experiences? I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you disagree with what I'm saying, feel free to leave it in the comments. Shoot me an email. You can also direct message me on X. True_LSS at X. But I hope you understand that I wanted to come in here just ranting, raving, sounding like just angry, and I am angry. I'm angry that my mother still does not have power, and we're coming up on a week. She's 70 years old, and you know what? My mother is tough as they come. She's been through the crap more times than she would even care to admit. But there's a time, this is it. Everybody has their point, where their breaking point, and I think when it comes to the power companies like Texas, New Mexico, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Texas, New Mexico, to me, has done a much better job in keeping their customers informed, way better than CenterPoint has. And yes, it's a smaller company. They don't have as nearly a big a footprint as CenterPoint does, but with that larger company, don't you have bigger IT people to update the website and things of that nature? Texas and New Mexico Power kicked y'all's ass, CenterPoint. Plain and simple. But at the same time, to be a week out and still not have power to over 50% of Wild Peach, unacceptable. Very much so unacceptable. That's going to wrap up this episode of Lone Star Spirit. Again, let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what your experiences were or are, if they're ongoing, with the remnants of the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Where do you think the failure was? Where do you think we could improve? Do you think the underground power transmission lines is a great idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Let me know. Anything and everything. Hit me up on X at true_LSS on X or Twitter. Email TMOLR1973@gmail.com. And, of course, leave them in the comments. This is going to be on Rumble and YouTube. like I said, we'll probably come back to this in a couple of weeks and revisit this and see what everybody thinks. Hopefully I'll have some things to share with you from the viewership. But until next time, and next time should be, we're going to go back to the Freeport Historical Museum, and I'm going to show you the great museum that's there. So we'll do something a little bit more fun than the past week has been, week plus on this channel. So everyone, pray for the victims of the incident at the Trump rally in Pennsylvania yesterday. Pray for the people who are still suffering with power outages in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Everyone stay safe and come together. Let's make this a learning experience where we can make improvements that things like this never happen again on this scale and this big of a failure. Till next time, this is Lone Star Spirit. I'm Charles. Everyone have a great work week. Let's get the power back on Center Point, and we'll talk to you again very soon.